Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto Trained by Jiraiya and Tsume Apprentice Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. The sun was coming up over Konohagakure, the village hidden in the leaves. It was another warm, clear day in the mostly peaceful village. Most people were quietly getting up and getting ready for their day, some getting ready to open their shops, few getting ready to go tend to their modest crop fields. This quietness covered most of the village, except for one compound in the city, the home of the Inuzuka family, where loud, boisterous laughter and the barking of dogs filled the air. This laughter was caused by two 12-year-old boys, one Kiba Inuzuka, and one Naruto Uzumaki. The boys were in the backyard of the main house rolling and tussling with the Ninken after feeding and watering said dogs. They had been running around and playing with the dogs for nearly 20 minutes before they heard the loud shout of Tsume Inuzuka, the clan head, and Kiba's mother. "Alright pups, get up and get ready, you're gonna be late to the exams, and I will not have you boys repeating this exam again." Her voice held a tough, take no shit edge to it, but the boys both knew that she cared for the both of them deeply. Even though Naruto was not an Inuzuka, she treated him as if he were Kiba's twin brother, one of her own litter ever since Kiba had brought the boy home from the playground years ago. Flashback. Tsume was in the den of their home going over some papers for the clan and a report from the academy regarding her eldest child, Hana. With as much as she and Kiba tussled at home, she was happy to find it was only papers concerned about the three gray puppies that were her partners that seemed to enjoy sneaking under the teacher's desk and licking his toes instead of staying seated with their master, as he put it. Tsume was drawn from her papers by the loud bang of the front door being nearly thrown from its hinges and the loud shout of, "Mom, I'm home and I have a new friend." This shout belonged to her youngest, her son Kiba. Storming out of the den and into the kitchen to find two dirty 7-year-old boys with mud tracked into the kitchen with the door standing wide open being them. To her surprise, her son's new friend was a great surprise to her. She knew exactly who the boy was and had to hide her sad smile. The messy little boy that stood before her, covered from the tips of his blonde hair down his, "Kill me now," orange shirt and shorts, all the way down to the wiggling toes of his little bare feet was none other than the son of her late friend Kushina, and the late 4th Hokage Minato Namikaze, little Naruto Uzumaki, his whiskered cheeks nearly being split by his smile. Both boys stood there smiling up at Tsume. Kiba's was completely happy and oblivious, Naruto's though, was tinged with nervousness, fear, and a little bit of hope. Naruto knew all too well the fact that he may be rejected and at best shoot out of the house and lose his new friend, or at worst be beaten again and left outside to bleed and cry till he healed and could walk to his decrepit, broken down apartment and his barely working shower to clean up again. To his great surprise, the tall, feral-looking woman before him simply shook her head before raising her voice at the boy beside him. "Boy, since when did I raise you to leave that door standing open and track mud through my kitchen?" Exclamation mark. "Take your friend out back, hose down, and I'll bring you dry clothes, then you're both going to come back in here and clean up this mess. Now go close that door and get your little asses out back and find that hose." The boys both chucked before turning and running back out the door, again forgetting to close it, and ran around to get mostly cleaned up, leaving Tsume standing there shaking her head with a helpless, happy smirk. "Kushi-chan, your little boy is just like you." Flashback end. The now 12-year-old boys both got up, petting the nearest dogs before shouting, "Hi-ka-san-chan," and running into the house to grab their breakfast and run out the still open door and a yet again annoyed Tsume shaking her head at her sons. 15 minutes and 45 shouts of indignation and surprise later at the academy. Naruto and Kiba, with Akamaru sitting between them on the desk, sat in the back of the room with Skikamaru, the Nara clan heir, and Choji, the Akamaiki clan heir, both of whom had been Naruto and Kiba's best friends since they started in the academy years ago. Shikamaru was currently asleep with his head on his arms on the table, and Choji, unlike Shikamaru, was wide awake and talking to the other two while munching away happily on his fourth bag of chips since they got there. How do you guys think you're gonna do on the exam, guys? Naruto laid his head back and stared at the ceiling as he thought about Kiba's question. Choji, however, didn't hesitate longer than it took to swallow his chips. I think we're all gonna make it. I'm more worried about what teams we're gonna be on. Sticking another handful of chips in his mouth before offering the bag over toward Naruto, as sure a sign of friendship from the Akamaiki as any you would ever find anywhere. Sitting up and taking a couple chips from the bag, Naruto looked around at the other students filling the room. I don't know, I really hope I pass. I mean, I know years ago I would have just yelled, I'm gonna make it and no one can stop me, Datbeo. And that would have been the end of it, but Tsume Ka-chan helped show me just how far behind I really was back there. Popping the chips in his mouth as Akamaru gave a yip and nuzzled his arm. Thanks. The relatively quiet moment between friends was shattered as the twin-ear killers known as Ino Yamanaka and Sakura Haruno came running and screaming into the room, wedging themselves, yet again, into the door side by side in their never-ending competition to sit next to their dreamy Sasuke-kun. Finally breaking free of the jam, both girls fell flat only to scramble to get to the single, open seat next to their heartthrob obsession. The boys ignored this, having seen both girls get the seat over the years, not really caring about the now common occurrence. A few moments later their teachers, Iruka and Mizuki, stepped in and quieted the class by Iruka's master jutsu, the demon head jutsu, which made his head seem to become huge and increase his vocal power tenfold. This too was nothing new to the boys, though they seemed to come to enjoy it after a while, having found it was fun to not wake Shikamaru when the teachers came in and let him jump whenever Iruka got their attention. Needless to say, after Iruka shouted, the three already conscious boys were nearly rolling at their now conscious friend that had flipped backwards in his chair in the back of the room. This caused Iruka to smirk and shake his head at the recurring prank. Iruka cleared his throat before addressing the class. Okay, before we get started, I want you all to know that I am proud of every single one of you, no matter how you come out of the final exam. It was my joy to teach, most of you, shooting a smirking glare at the similarly smirking boys in the back of the room. Iruka went on to explain how he and Mizuki would conduct the final exam and what was expected of them before heading to the door into the next room, Iruka staying long enough to call out the first name alphabetically. As the day rolled on, students would come back into the room either smiling with their new heartache, or in some state of depression or denial and without one. This went on until Naruto was finally called down. His friends all gave him encouragement as he went down. Even the shy little Hinata wished him luck as he passed her on his way to the door. Once he got to the other room, Naruto found Iruka and Mizuki sitting behind a table with many heartache of various colors sitting on it. Both teachers had clipboards in hand and were smiling at Naruto, though Naruto noticed that Mizuki's smile seemed forced and nowhere near genuine. Iruka spoke up and brought Naruto out of his observations. Okay, Naruto. It's very simple, you just have to perform the 3 basic academy jutsu, you've passed everything else already. Are you ready? Naruto nodded his head and first performed the kawarimi, replacing himself with one of the chairs in the back of the room for just that reason, then again to move back into place before them. The chunin both marked on their boards before Naruto performed the henge, changing into a perfect replica of his mother, Tsume, who stood there with the exact feral smirk that was given when she knew she had won at something. Changing back to himself, Naruto gave off that same smirk before forming a cross sign and shouting out, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, before a large cloud of smoke filled the room and 9 shadow clones filled in behind the original, and in unison shouted out, how's this, sensei? Every one of them, including the real Naruto, stood there smiling like the cat that got the canary. That smile only lasted as long as it took for Mizuki's own smile to form on his lips. I'm sorry, Naruto, but we cannot count that one. Naruto's smile and spirit fell. Tsume Ka-chan's going to be so disappointed. Or pissed. Or both. Naruto thought to himself before a new voice spoke up from the door in the back of the room. They all turned to see a tall, broad man leaning against the door frame. He was easily one of the tallest men any of them had ever seen, easily matching Jiraiya of the Sannin. His long, dark brown hair tied back in a ponytail, a few strands hanging over the front of his horned Konoha heartache and down his face on the right side. His dark brown eyes squinted a little as he smiled at the blond boy standing before the table. Stepping into the room, they could see that he wore loose, black cargo pants, wrapped at the ankle over his black shinobi sandals, a shinobi mail shirt under a gray-black shirt with a red jacket with green accents covered in storage pockets and storage seal arrays visible on the inside with the plate from a heartache that kanji for oil attached to both shoulders. He pulled off his fingerless gloves as he stepped up beside Naruto and placed a hand on his shoulder. Naruto looked up at him with the slit pupils of his blue eyes. Dar-ni-san, you really made it. Naruto beamed up at the man as the teachers both stood and bowed to him. Darius-san, it's a pleasure. What brings you here? Iruka asked, genuinely happy to see the man beside his surrogate brother, son. Mizuki spoke up before an answer could be given. As much a pleasure as it is to see you here, but I'm afraid you're wrong about that jutsu being acceptable. I'm afraid Naruto must perform the standard bunshin to pass this exam, sitting there with a smug smirk that he was unable to hide. The man now known as Darius started to glare at the smug teacher, knowing full well, from the letters he had received, of the teacher's subtle attempts to sabotage the boy's education and grades. If that's the case, then I think it's safe to say that I shouldn't be standing here as I am, now should I? Leveling a small amount of killing intent directly at Mizuki, who started to sweat, knowing that there was an actual precedence to Naruto's situation, and that man that created that precedence was standing next to the demon brat that he so hated. Iruka, hearing this, smiled and called Naruto forward to pick his heartache. Naruto stepped up and happily picked out one with a dark gray band to match the new jacket that Tsume had bought for him and had waiting for him at home once he graduated. Congratulations Naruto, I'm so proud of you. Iruka smiled at him before telling him the name of the next person to send in and sending him off. As Naruto got to the door, tying his new headband over his forehead, he looked back. Iruka-sensei, Dar-ni-san, want to get ramen with me after you're done before I go home? Both men nodded and waved him off before Darius turned back to look at Mizuki, Iruka doing the same. I don't know what kind of shit you're trying to pull, but I know full well that you know that an advanced bunshin like that is acceptable under the Yondame's amendment to graduation requirements. Mizuki started to sweat under the glaring eyes of both men as he worked quickly to form an acceptable lie to cover his own. I was just seeing if he would stand up to me, and if he knew the rules or not. Darius knew that this was a flat-out lie, and a rather poor one at that, but let it go, fully planning on letting the Sandame know about it later when he officially reported his stop-in. It's a good thing that I stepped in then, considering that you're only meant to give the prescribed test and not added stress to the students. Looking over at Iruka, Jenkin for the bill tonight. A few hours later at the academy gates, Naruto stood there with his friends chatting happily about passing and their possibly team placements the following Monday, who they hoped their senseis would be and generally what they thought their first missions would be. Naruto and Kiba were broken from the conversation by a familiar voice coming down the street. Hey Runts, am I still the only ninja of the three of us? The voice belonged to Kiba's 13-year-old sister Hana. Naruto blushed a little as the newly minted Chunin walked up to them with her companions, the Heimaru triplets in tow beside her, smiling as she saw them both wearing heartache. Naruto had to shake himself out of his blush before smiling at her like Kiba was. Yeah, it wasn't a problem at all, just like I said. Kiba puffed out his chest proudly and Akamaru barked out as well to back up his partner's pride. Hana looked over at Naruto, a light dusting of a blush hitting her cheeks as she smiled at him. So, How did you do, Naruto-kun? Blow them away. Naruto's smile faltered a little before cheering back up. Darnie-san showed up and made sure I passed when Mizuki-sensei tried to say that I couldn't pass using shadow clones, that they had to be academy-style clones. Oh, that reminds me, I'm going to go eat at Ichiraku's with him and Iruka-sensei when they get done in a couple minutes. Tell Sum-ka-chan that I'll be home after we eat, okay? Giving her a goofy grin as he scratched the back of his head, having forgot to ask if he could before making the offer. Hannah smiled and shook her head. Mom will be fine with it, you'll be hungry again by the time you get home anyway. Stepping up to him, she pulled him into a hug and whispered into his ear, "Congratulations, Naruto-kun." She let go and stepped back when she noticed the two men stepping around the gates and looking over to the trio. Darius spoke up and waved, "Hey, you two, gonna take the shrimp with us and get some celebration ramen for him. Tell your mom we'll have him back home long before dinner." Smiling as he motioned for Naruto to come with them. Smiling and waving at his friends' siblings, Naruto ran over to the men and the three headed off. The two Inuzukas headed off back home, talking about how missions went and possible senseis and teams that Kiba and Naruto might be on. Kiba had a small hope that he and Naruto would be on the same genin team, knowing that they already had great teamwork. An hour later outside Ichiraku's. After having his fill, Naruto bid Darius and Iruka farewell and headed back home for the night. Iruka did the same, leaving Darius to head to the Hokage's office to finally let him know that he had arrived in town. As he walked, he looked around, noticing the people not paying him much mind as he made his way through the streets toward his destination, smiling as a few girls and women giggled and blushed as they looked at him as he passed, though none of them knew he was already spoken for. After a few minutes' travel, Darius finally arrived the large oak doors that was the entrance to the Hokage's office. Looking over at the secretary sitting beside the doors, "Is he in and available?" Looking up, the middle-aged woman smiled, recognizing him before informing him that he could go ahead on in. Giving the door a knock, Darius waited for permission to enter before stepping in to see the Hokage behind a couple tall stacks of paper. "Ah, Darius-kun, I'm happy to see you. Is my student with you this time?" Darius stepped in and closed the door before taking a seat. "I'm sorry, Master's not with me this time. He made sure that I came to see Naruto's graduation, which I'm glad I did." One of the instructors tried to deny him graduation. He went on to tell Hiruzen about what happened and was said. Very unhappy about this, the aged leader called upon his Anbu. "Neko, Inu," said pair appeared, kneeling before him. "Inu, seeing as you're retiring from Anbu at the end of the day, this will be my last request of you as an Anbu. You two are to go pick up Mizuki, quietly. Take him to Ibiki and Anko. It seems he's been actively trying to sabotage Naruto's education and possible career. Tell them to see if that's all that he's been up to." Dismissed. The pair vanished before Hiruzen let out a small sigh. The cruelty of some people never ceased to amaze me. Darius looked up at Hiruzen with a serious look to his face. "Sir, there's more that needs to be talked about. Master's network has picked up news that they have captured another Biju." Hiruzen walked over to the window and looked out over the village as the sun sank over the horizon. "Let's hope that they don't come for him before he can be trained," letting out rings of smoke as he continued to watch the sun fall, closing out yet another day. The next morning found two soundly sleeping boys falling from their beds onto one another on the floor, having been violently awakened by Hannah loudly yelling for them to wake up and come down to breakfast. A few minutes passed as the boys got up, took care of their morning routines and got dressed and headed downstairs to the kitchen to find Hannah still smirking as she ate her breakfast. As they reached the bottom of the stairs, they were both wearing their new jackets that Tsume had bought them for graduation. Kiba's was a gray hooded coat with black fur lining the hood and wrists. Naruto's coat was the same as Kiba's though with the colors inverted and a red Uzumaki swirl on the left shoulder. In addition to the new coat, Naruto had donned a pair of black shinobi cargo pants with the ankles taped, black shinobi sandals, and black sleeveless shirt with the same swirl on the front as his coat bore on the shoulder, and his heartache on his forehead, holding back his mess of blonde hair. If you two had been any longer, I'd have given Akamaru and the boys your food. Hana joked as said Ninken all perked up from their bowls, thinking that they may just get the food anyway. This look soon died though as both boys quickly dug into their food, almost trying to put it away before it could be taken away. Seeing this, Hana's sweat dropped. Calm down. I wasn't really. You're gonna choke if you keep at it like that. As if Anke Kiba started to cough and pound his chest a few times before going back to eating. Hana simply shook her head as she watched. As much as I think you boys should hurry up, I have to agree with Hana. You need to get to team assignments soon, but you can't do that if you choke. Tsume walked into the kitchen with a mug in hand. Hi. Both boys chorused before finishing their plates and putting them in the sink before running for the door, Kiba scooping up a still eating and surprised Akamaru before leaving the door standing wide open with a shout of, "Bai Ka-san, Tsume Ka-chan." Konoha Ninja Academy. Kiba and Naruto ran into the room out of breath, hoping that they weren't late, only to find Iruka sitting at his desk with a puzzled look on his face as they burst through the door. The boys took a seat and started grumbling about stupid mothers and sisters tricking them. As it turned out, Tsume and Hana had set all the clocks ahead 30 minutes and had a little fun with them. Needless to say, the boys had arrived plenty early. As the other students, ninja filtered into the room for their team assignments, Naruto, Kiba, Shikamaru, and Choji all sat in the back as usual, watching the other take their seats. One student was the Hyuga heiress Hinata. As she moved to her seat, she kept glancing up at the pair in the back. Man, I don't know how you do it. The one girl in the class that isn't all gaga over the duck has the hots for you. Of all people, must be 'cause you're blonde or something. Kiba grumbled. It was as well known as Hinata's crush on Naruto, that Kiba had just as big a crush on Hinata. Naruto knew it from day one when Kiba started talking about Hinata-chan, when they got home one day from school. Naruto had become friends with the shy girl, but had never returned her amorous actions. He wouldn't deny that she was indeed very attractive, kind, and funny when she would open up on those rare occasions. I'm telling you, if you would just act normal for once, and just talk to her instead of clamming up and fuming when we talk, she might just like you in that way instead of me. Naruto spoke from his head down position beside his fellow sleeper, who was sitting in the same position. A few more minutes of similar conversation passed before Iruka finally stood up and got their attention using the infamous big head jutsu, sending both Naruto and Shikamaru flipping backwards in their chairs in response. Okay, let's get things started. Inuzuka House. You did well raising both of those boys to this point, Tsume. I have no idea how you could handle them both. Darius sat at the kitchen table with Tsume and Hiruzen as Iruka gave his long, proud speech about being ninjas to the new genin. Indeed you have, Tsume. If they were anything like my boys, you had your hands full. Hiruzen spoke up before taking a sip of his tea. Yeah, the pups are a handful plus 3. I'm just lucky that I was able to. That council damn near made that impossible to do. Tsume sipped at her coffee as she remembered back to the day she was called into the council meeting. Flashback. Tsume arrived with Kuromaru at the council room after being summoned for an emergency meeting called by the elders. Heading in and nodding to the few others that were there already and taking her seat with Kuromaru at her side. As the rest of the council showed up and took their seats, those not of the ninja council noticed Kuromaru sitting beside Tsume. Hiruzen finally arrived and took his seat at the head of the room. I'd really like to know what's so important that it called for calling this an emergency meeting. Would someone care to explain what's going on? The Hokage looked around at the gathered members, then back at the 3 elders. There was silence for a good 2 minutes while he patiently waited, slowly starting to leak killing intent after the first until one of the civilians spoke up. We've heard word that someone has taken the boy in and is planning to adopt him. If I remember correctly, a law, passed by majority in this very council forbade such an act. The man that spoke up was a newly appointed council member, having replaced his late father. The man went on, not knowing proper tact while around ninja clan heads. I am told that the Inuzuka clan has been sheltering him for the last week and a half already. Hiruzen smiled internally, happy to hear that someone wanted to and actually was helping the young Naruto. He looked around as a few gasps and murmurs started to rise. A few of the less intelligent civilians started to stare and glare at Tsume as she seemed to simply sit there and take it. On the inside was a different story. She was absolutely seething, and Kuromaru could sense it and let out a low growl that got the counselor that had spoken up to start with. I hate to sound as new to this as I already seem, but why is there a dog in this meeting? I realize that the Inuzuka have a partnership, but should it actually be here? Hearing this, Kuromaru moved so that his head was above the table and looked right at the man before saying, "You do realize that I can speak, correct?" The counselor managed to hide his shock as he looked Kuromaru in the eyes and replied, "You do realize that even though you can speak, you are not a member of this council." Kuromaru tilted his head to the side before saying, with what sounded like a smirk to his voice, "You do realize I can easily, and happily piss on you from here." This got a few appalled looks from the civilians, but several snickers from the ninjas, including Hiruzen and one dog-masked Anbu standing in the shadows behind him. To answer your question though, due to the nature of the partnership between us Ninken with the humans of the Inuzuka pack, and I being the alpha and patriarch of the Ninken in said pack, I am granted a seat on this council when it concerns matters that directly involve our clan as a whole. Now, with what you have just stated, I believe that this council meeting was called to bring up matters concerning our clan. Does that answer your questions? The ninjas, including Shikaku this time, all seemed to smirk at the utterly dumbfounded look on the civilian side's faces. Is that even right? Looking around, then to the Hokage who nodded his head. Very well then. Coughing to clear his throat, now, as I was saying at the start of the meeting, it has come to our attention that one Tsume Inuzuka has plans of adopting the boy. As we know, that is not allowed or legal. What are we going to do about this? Hiruzen sat there wondering how the members of the council had heard about this, considering that Tsume had only just that morning come to him with the idea of adopting Naruto into her clan. He had his ideas, glancing covertly over at Danzo, fairly sure that he had not disbanded his root organization as he had been ordered years ago. Before Hiruzen or anyone else could answer, Jiraiya's voice filled the room, causing the heads of all there to turn to see who was speaking. Nothing's going to be done, because she's not adopting the young man, she's simply offering him aid and shelter, which is not against the so-called law that this council created just to spite that young man. As the members of the council turned to look at Jiraiya, they saw him standing there with a 23-year-old Darius standing beside him, slowly looking around the room as his master spoke up. Tsume wanted to say something about Jiraiya's comment before it occurred to her. This is his solution to the problem. He's right, if I don't adopt the pup, then I can keep him with us, I can help him out while the rest of the village tries to hurt and hamper him. Great maneuvering, ya old pervert. Smirking to herself before one of the older members spoke up. Greetings Lord Jiraiya, and I believe this young man here is your new apprentice Darius. We are glad to see that you and he are back around, but I'm sure that you are mistaken in your statements. The counselor, one Mebuki Haruno, sat back in her chair, smirking triumphantly, or seemingly so until a book was dropped on the table in front of her, courteously of a still smirking Jiraiya. Would you care to check that page and read the definition of adopt please? Jiraiya stood there in front of her, even though he knew the meaning but wanted to make a point. I'm sure we all know the meaning of the. She was interrupted by Hiruzen as he gave her a stern look. Humor us. Mebuki started to sweat before starting to read. Adopt. To take into one's family through legal means and raise as one's own child, but Lord Jiraiya, that is exactly what she is doing. Jiraiya stepped over toward the ninja council members, specifically closer to Tsume. Ah, but it's not. Has she signed any paperwork that proclaims Naruto Uzumaki as her adopted son? Not waiting for any answers. Is she in fact taking him in as part of her family? The answers to that are no. She's taking the young boy and treating him like a low-pay stable hand, if you will. I have seen the pens at their compound. It may as well be called a stable with what some of your kin leave behind. Kuramaru. He'll be working for room and board, and before you say a single word about that not being allowed, there is no law or rule stating that he cannot work or hold a job. Trust me, I looked. Jiraiya looked around, making sure that no one would say anything against him and his plan to help his godson out since he couldn't be there long enough to take care of him. Seeing as there is no actual issue here to be discussed since Jiraiya cleared up any misunderstanding, I call this emergency meeting to an end. Danzo grit his teeth at this, knowing that his plans to offer up shelter for the boy himself and turn him into the living weapon he thought any Jinchuriki should really be. Hiruzen, Tsume, Jiraiya and Darius all stayed behind after all the others left, all but Inu, who stepped out of the shadows and joined them. Inu was dressed as a normal Anbu with his gravity-defying silver hair standing behind his mask. That was quite the save there, Jiraiya. I was wondering if I'd have to do something drastic to let Tsume here keep Naruto with her, though I'm sure she would have much more wanted to bring him into her family. Tsume had a sad smile on her face as this was said. I'm just happy that I can help take care of my best friend's son. She would have done the same for Kiba and Hana if the roles were reversed. They all agreed, though Jiraiya felt a little guilty for not taking care of Naruto himself. I'll be sending Darius here back alone every so often to check in on little Naruto and help teach and train him with you, and I'll come visit when I can. Hiruzen then spoke up. Tsume, you should probably go on home. I'm sure you've got a few eager kids to get back to with the mostly good news. Tsume smiled a genuine smile to the aged Hokage before heading out with Kuromaru on her heels to go tell Naruto that he'd be staying with them from now on. Flashback end. Smiling to herself at the memory of Jiraiya stepping in and saving the day, so to speak, and giving her the chance to take care of Kushina's only child, who had over time slowly become more and more like her own. If it weren't for that brilliant old pervert, Naruto may have been living alone in a ratty little apartment that got broke into and vandalized over and over. He's actually happy on his birthday now, even though we don't participate in the festival. I am a little sad that he never gets to go out and participate. The festival should be celebrating him for his sacrifice, but instead, they try to sacrifice him to alleviate their own lack of understanding. Darius spoke up as he finished off his cup of tea, waving off Tsume's offer of a refill. I actually should head out after a bit. I need to catch up with Master soon. I'll be back in a couple months. By the way, thank you Hokage-sama for letting me meet with Naruto's Jonin sensei. I'm rather pleased with your choice. I just hope he keeps what we talked about in mind when he starts, if he passes them. Standing up and bowing to his hostess and leader, Darius excused himself and headed off. Thanks again for the tea, Tsume. Maybe next time I'll bring some of my own and treat you. I still find it hard to believe that that old pervert managed to train and bring up not just one, but two very capable ninja like Minato and Darius. Hiruzen couldn't help but chuckle at Tsume's comment. They are all three very much alike, each with their own personality, but all very reliable, loyal, and extremely dangerous and powerful in their own ways. I'm very proud of my student, and his. Hiruzen sipped quietly at his tea as he glanced at the small scroll left on the table for Naruto. Konoha Ninja Academy. Now for Team 7's members, Sakura Haruno, Sasuke. Iruka was interrupted by a loud, screeching, victorious shout from said Haruno. Iruka coughed to get her attention before she sat down, beaming at the choice, even under the murderous stares of the other fangirls. As I was saying, Sasuke Uchiha, and Naruto Uzumaki. This earned a loud thump and a groan. The thump was Sakura's head hitting her desk, and the groan was from Naruto, whose head was still on his arms in feigned sleep. Why do we need such a useless shinobi on the same team as the amazing Sasuke-kun? Sakura fumed as she tried scooting closer to Sasuke, who in response tried to scoot farther away. Naruto simply grumbled into his arms, just loud enough for his friends beside him to hear, about loud, annoying, pink-haired fangirls and bleeding ears. These comments got the other 3 boys, and 1 puppy, to laugh in the back of the room. If you're finished back there in the peanut gallery. Iruka stared down the boys as they quieted down, then began back with his reading. Your Jonin sensei will be Kakashi Hatake. This comment caught Naruto's attention. His eyes shot open with his head still down to hide his reaction. He's a legend, man. I hope he teaches me some cool things like Darnie and that old man that stops by with him. Team 8 will consist of Shino Aburame, Hinata Hyuga, and Kiba Inuzuka. A small yip was heard after that. And Akamaru, giving a small smile as he said that, then continued. Your Jonin sensei will be Kurenai Yuhi. Kiba sat with a small blush as he looked down at the slightly disappointed-looking Hinata before he felt an elbow to the ribs from his surrogate brother and looked down to see him looking up at him with one eye. Work on friendship first, maybe a little comforting support, then just be the way Hana and Tsume Ka-chan keep trying to get you act, you'll get her. Kiba could see the small smile from the side of Naruto's face that was showing, gaining a confident smile of his own in the process. Team 9 is still in rotation, so Team 10 will consist of Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, Troublesome, and Choji Akamichi. This earned another groan, this one being from the blonde in the class. Your Jonin sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi. Looking around at the class and seeing some of the new graduates moving to sit with their respective teams, Iruka continued on for a moment. Your Jonin senseis will come and gather you for your first team meeting soon. I just want to tell you all once more, just how proud I am of every single one of you, and that it has been one of my greatest honors to teach you all to this point. Listen to and learn from your senseis and each other, and I'm sure you will all go far and make the village as a whole proud of you all as well. After that, he bowed to them all, gathered his papers, and headed out just as a few of the senseis filed into the room and started to gather their new teams. After around 10 minutes, Kiba and Hinata were waving to Naruto as they left with their new sensei, leaving only Naruto, Sakura and Sasuke in the room alone, Sakura trying her best to woo Sasuke in the middle row by the window, and Naruto, head still down as he sat in the back of the middle of the back row. An hour passed as they sat there, still waiting, then another, then as the 3rd hour was about to tick around, the door slid open to reveal a tall man with one eye covered by his heartache, the bottom of his face covered up to his nose with a cloth mask, and wearing a standard Jonin uniform and gravity-defying silver hair stepped in and looked around. Team 7, getting nods, even from the head down. Naruto, my first impression of you all. I'm not impressed, meet me on the roof in 10 minutes. He then vanished in a swirl of leaves, leaving the trio to get up and start heading to the roof. Once they reached the roof, they saw Kakashi sitting on a bench waiting for them to get there while reading a little orange book, one that Naruto recognized as one that Tsume had banned from the house. Without looking up from his book, he motioned to the benches in front of him for them to take a seat on. Okay, since we're going to be a team, we may as well go ahead and introduce ourselves to each other. You likes, dislikes, dreams or goals. Finally putting away his book and looking at them all and waited for them to start out. Sakura spoke up after a moment. Sensei, why don't you start out for us? Kakashi gave an eye smile before nodding and speaking again. Okay, my name is Kakashi Hatake, I am your Jonin sensei, I like a lot of things, don't have many dislikes, and my dreams. I don't really want to share those. Now, you're up Pinky. Pointing to Sakura. All 3 genin sweat dropped, even Sasuke, as they all 3 thought the exact same thing. All we learned was his name and rank. Sakura gave in and started out. My name is Sakura Haruto, I like Sasuke-kun, my family, and studying, I dislike perverts and Naruto, sending a glare that somehow had killing intent laced into it. My dream is to one day. She looked over at Sasuke and squealed while pulling her hands up to her face. Kakashi got a sweat drop at that description, then turned to Sasuke and spoke. Okay. Now, Mr. Dark and Moody, you're up. This earned him a glare from Sakura for the name. My name is Sasuke Uchiha, remember it. I don't like much, I hate a lot, and my dreams, no, my aspiration is to kill a certain man, and to rebuild my clan once I have killed that man. Kakashi let out a low sigh at what he had heard from Sasuke, a bit disappointed with his response. He then looked over to Naruto and once again spoke. Okay Blondie, you're up. Naruto decided to stand as he spoke. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I like training, my friends, my family. Quote. This part caught Kakashi by surprise until he heard the next words. And there Ninken. I dislike people that pass judgment without knowing the whole truth or the matter, and arrogant pricks that think the world owes them everything without earning even a scrap of what they already have. Giving a bit of a glance over at Sasuke. My goals are to become the best shinobi I can for this village, to make my family proud, and to become Hokage one day. Kakashi gave an eye, smiled at this and nodded. Okay. Now, I want you all to meet me at Training Field 7 tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. for your test. Before he could say anything more, Sakura spoke up in a shrill pitch. Test. We already passed the test. What test are you talking about? Sasuke actually nodded his head to this, rather upset that he'd have to take another pointless, in his opinion at least, test when he's already passed the first one with flying colors. Kakashi took this moment to explain. That test was to see if you had the skills needed to be considered by a Jonin for a team. This test is the real graduation test, the one to find out if you have what it takes to make the cut as a real genin of Konoha, to join the ranks and defend out village as a skilled and reliable shinobi or kunoichi. Now, with that said, you'd better not have breakfast tomorrow morning, you're going to end up losing it if you do, and I'd rather not have to avoid it while administering your test. Now, see you all tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Giving a small wave and eye smile before vanishing once again in a swirl of leaves, leaving his possibly students sitting there before Naruto and Sasuke both got up and headed to the stairwell access door before Sakura came to and hurried to follow them. Once they got to the ground floor and left the academy gate, Naruto went off on his own way, heading home, sure that he heard Sakura trying to invite Sasuke out to eat since they were a team now. As he walked, he thought to himself, now I get to let loose and stop hiding what Darnie and Sumka-chan have taught me. A small smirk growing on his face as he started to jog the rest of the way home, anxious for tomorrow to come. Ka-chan. Sensei told us not to eat breakfast. Naruto sat at the kitchen table with Kiba and Hana as Tsume sat a large plate in front of each of them. Kiba and Hana happily dug in while Naruto looked at her as if he were being told to ignore the Hokage himself. I don't care what he told you, I'm telling you to clean that plate before you step foot out that door. Tsume stood there staring down Naruto, who was sitting there staring right back up at her. After a minute though, Naruto finally relented and started to eat. Not surprisingly, he quickly finished off the entire plate before hopping up and putting it in the sink to be washed later before rushing to the door to get on his sandals and head off to the training grounds to take his real test. As Naruto ran off, followed in short order by Kiba and Hana, Tsume thought to herself, I wonder if that suggestion of Kakashi's was what I think it is. Tsume started into the dishes, feeling generous today considering that Naruto and Kiba both were going to be taking their team tests. XXXXXXX. Naruto bounced along down the road as he made his way to the training field they had been told to meet at by their new sensei yesterday, ready and excited about the test. Looking around, he almost hoped he'd see more of his friends from the academy on the way to their tests but saw none so far. A small part of him secretly wanted to see Hana again away from the house. He wasn't sure why he wanted to see her or spend more time with her over the past year, but over the last couple months it had started getting stronger and stronger. He had even noted how good she looked wearing her swimsuit when they went swimming, or blushing when she'd wear shorts and a tank around the house in the afternoons when they were all home, or how his heart would beat harder when she leaned against him on the couch every now and then. Naruto had to shake those thoughts from his mind as he came up to the bridge over the stream on the edge of the training grounds, noticing that Sasuke was already there brooding. Naruto walked up to him and leaned against the rail beside him. It was relatively peaceful for a few minutes until Sasuke kuunn. Naruto lifted his finger to rub in his ear, wondering if the Harunos had a new bloodline limit that involved their voices and liquefying a person's brains from afar. Sasuke didn't seem very happy about it either as he let out a low groan as Sakura quickly made her way over to them and rather roughly shoved Naruto out of the way and almost over the railing. You could have just got to the other side, or at least asked me to move. Sakura leveled a glare at Naruto as if he had suggested the stupidest thing ever spoken, then turned back to Sasuke and proceeded to fawn over him. Are you excited, Sasuke-kun? What do you think the test is gonna be? Oh, it doesn't matter anyway. I'm sure you'll pass it with no problems at all. Sakura continued to ramble on as Naruto moved over to the other side of the bridge and leaned forward over the rail, watching the fish calmly swimming in shade the bridge cast upon the water below, enjoying the calming affect it had on him, even with the screaming banshee of a teammate behind him going on and on about the greatness of her Sasuke-kun. XXXXXXX. Hana was walking down the streets of Konoha with one of her closer friends Yugao. The two Chunin had time to burn with no missions for them for the day, so they decided to spend some time together and just relax for the day. They had been walking around for an hour, and even though they were both strong, deadly, and competent kunoichi, they were first and foremost still teenage girls, so the subject of boys came up, and one name that Hana hadn't been outwardly expecting came up. What about Naruto? I know he's a year younger, but he's pretty cute. What do you think, Hana? Yugao noticed the small dusting of pink on Hana's cheeks as she started thinking about her surrogate brother, his sun-kissed blonde hair, his soft tan, his deep blue eyes with their vertical slit pupils, so much like her clan members that she wondered if he might actually be a distant relative at times. She also thought about the times that she had watched him training shirtless and the butterflies that the image stirred inside her. The times that she would secretly blush as she would snuggle up to him on the couch at night after dinners when they were all relaxing. She especially thought of the immense warmth that his body put off, so much so that she never had to use the blanket on the couch when against him. She was brought from her thoughts-gone daydreams by Yugao's voice. I guess you think a lot about him. Smirking almost deviously as she looked at her friend as she noticed the soft blush turn into a deep burning blush before Hana spoke up. What are you getting at? Naruto's like my brother. He lives in our home and treats me like his big sister, and Kiba like his brother. Her blush not leaving, and actually deepening as the thought of the possible taboo of such a relationship is what her friend was suggesting. And I suppose that you turning into a tomato is because you think of him only as your little brother. You have a crush on him, don't you? Yugao's smirk turning into a smile as she looked at Hana, who now wore a half-confused look under her blush as she started to think about it. Could I actually have a crush on Naruto? Is that what is causing those feelings whenever I'm around him? Even so, what would Mom think? What would Naruto think? What if he hates me for this? Hana almost started to panic as these thoughts ran through her head until Yugao once again saved her from her thoughts. You really do like Naruto, don't you? Her tone that of the supportive, caring friend trying hard to help Hana in a moment of confusion and need. It's okay. He may be younger than you, but he's also a very strong boy. Darius-san, Jiraiya's own apprentice, has been helping and teaching him for Kami's sake. And besides, he's not related by blood, he's not even adopted, so what's wrong if you do like Naruto? Yugao led Hana into a nearby tea shop and sat down so they could have a little privacy. I'm actually not sure myself how I feel about Naruto. I mean, I do love him, but that's the family kind. Looking down at the table as the waitress came up and took down their orders and moved off. Well, if you're not interested in him in that way, I could Alwa. She was cut off by Hannah glaring at her and leaking some killing intent as she firmly said, no. Yugao leaned back a little, her face holding a shocked look to it at the almost violent burst from Hannah. Seeing this, Hannah quickly got herself under control and lowered her head to stare at the table again, this time in shame for how she acted. I'm sorry, Yugao. I don't know what came over me. Pulling herself together, Yugao shook her head. It's okay, Hannah. That's actually close to the reaction I was expecting. I said what I did to see how you would react, and I think you may love Naruto more than just as a little brother though. Hannah looked up at her, thoroughly confused and conflicted now, both showing readily on her face as she looked to her friend with the dawning revelations. XXXXXXX. As the third hour of waiting rolled over, Kakashi finally arrived, book in hand, to find Naruto napping peacefully under a nearby tree, and Sasuke brooding away at the bridge while Sakura sat with a pout on the other side of the bridge. That is until Sakura noticed Kakashi and stood, pointing her finger and screamed, "You're late." Hearing this from the tree, Naruto jumped from his sleep and noticed their sensei standing on the bridge with his teammates. Quickly getting to his feet, Naruto quickly ran to them. Nice of you to join us, Dobi. Sasuke sarcastically remarked as Naruto joined them. Kakashi, though calm and impassive on the outside, was disappointed in Sasuke for his treatment of not only Naruto, but his teammates in general. He had been hiding in a tree nearby observing his prospective team and their interactions. Okay, now that we're here and ready, I'll explain this test for you. Closing his book and putting it away, Kakashi drew out a pair of bells and held them before his face in silence for a good minute before speaking again. Your objective is to get these bells from me before noon. I'll set a timer, and once the alarm goes off, if you are not holding the bells, you fail and I send you all back to the academy to wait and try again next year. Sakura chose this moment to voice what all three of them were wondering. Kakashi-sensei, there are only 2 bells, there are 3 of us. Kakashi moved to place the bells on his hip before looking back to them. I'm glad you noticed that, that is because only 2 of you will pass this test, the third, the one that does not get the bell before the time is up. Quote. Kakashi stood there for a moment, letting the ideas rush through their heads before darkly continuing, we'll go back to the academy. You all will have to come at me as if you were trying to kill me, that's the only way you will even get close. As the genin hopefuls let that all soak in, Kakashi took out a timer and set it for noon and set it on one of the training posts in the middle of the field. Now remember, you must get a bell before that alarm goes off. Your test starts now. As he spoke the last word, all 3 disappeared from sight. At least he thought all 3 had, for when he turned around, Kakashi spotted Naruto standing in the middle of the field, looking him over. You don't seem too very bright, Naruto. You intend to take me on one-on-one. Kakashi took out his book as he spoke. Off in the bushes, Sakura whispered to herself about how much of an idiot her blonde teammate really was. Off in a tree on the other side of the field, Sasuke's thoughts mirrored Sakura's comments, all the time thinking, it's typical for the Dobi to do something as stupid and simple-minded. I'm not scared, and I'm not one to back down or play it careful when you yourself told us to come at you with the intent to kill. Naruto drew a kunai and a handful of shuriken as he spoke, keeping his eyes on the Jonin the entire time. As careful as Naruto was being, Kakashi seemed to be the exact opposite, not having a care in the world as he stood there and giggled a little as he read his little orange book. This lack of concern is what triggered Naruto's move. Rushing right at Kakashi, Naruto let fly the shuriken in his left hand as he got closer to Kakashi. As the shuriken got closer to him, Kakashi simply dodged all of the thrown weapons, not once looking away from his book. As he dodged, Naruto got within arm's reach of Kakashi, taking a swing at his chest with the kunai, only for Kakashi to leap back, having seen Naruto's left hand reaching out for the bells on his waist. Nice try, Naruto, but too obvious. Leaping back away from Naruto as he took out another kunai and flung it at him, Kakashi simply dodged and moved in against Naruto's defense, forcing him to leap back this time for fear of taking a hit. As he leapt back, Naruto drew out a handful of kunai and shuriken and let them all fly while in the air. Kakashi was getting a little tired of the repetitive attacks and decided to end it. Rushing at Naruto before he could land or change directions, Kakashi, still reading his book, let loose a side kick that caught Naruto in the chest before he landed. The kick sent him flying back until he impacted a tree, but instead of a loud crunch, splatter, or cry of pain, there was a puff of smoke. A Kage Bunshin, huh? Very nice, Naruto. Let's see if you and your teammates are as good as I hope you all are. Sakura was speechless as she saw what just happened. The blonde idiot that she saw as a nuisance and hindrance to her and her Sasuke-kun had just used a B-ranked jutsu that was the advanced version of the one he had never been able to pull off in class no matter how much he tried. Sasuke, on the other hand, was crouched on a branch wondering when the dead last had learned such a technique and where. He knew that such a technique would aid him in killing his brother, give him that extra edge that he needs. The real Naruto, however, was hiding deeper into the tree line, absorbing the information that his clone had just learned from its attacks against Kakashi. He was so glad that Darius had taught him that technique and its uses a couple years back. Flashback. Naruto stood in the large training field in the Inuzuka compound looking at Darius as he stood across the field facing him. Okay, Naruto, nicely done. Now, I have a jutsu to teach you that not many can use. It will be of great aid to you not only in training, but once you become an actual shinobi of Konoha. Would you like to see? Naruto quickly nodded his head as he looked on impatiently before Darius stepped back a step and formed a single hand sign that Naruto had never seen before, and called out, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. A cloud of smoke appeared beside Darius as Naruto looked on. As the smoke cleared, there stood Darius in a duplicate. Seeing this, Naruto let out a huff, letting his shoulders slouch. It's just another clone technique, you know I can't do that. Sounding a little depressed as the duplicate Darius stepped up as the real one spoke. You think this is just another clone? Tell me what a clone is. The Darius clone stopped and stood beside Naruto as he went to explain what a standard clone was. The clone technique creates a minor genjutsu that makes the onlooker believe that there are multiples of the user, but there is no real mass to these clones. Naruto went to sweep his hand through the clone beside him only to find his hand stop against the clone's abdomen as the real Darius moved closer. But, it's a clone, or are you the real one and that one coming over is the clone? Naruto reached out and touched Darius as he and the clone started to chuckle at the ensuing antics of disbelief. Naruto, the shadow clone technique is not like a standard clone. It creates a solid clone, one that can actually fight and cast right beside its caster. The big downside to this is the chakra cost. It takes an immense amount of chakra just to cast the jutsu, so much so that if any normal genin were to even attempt it, they'd die, even if they managed to create one clone. You and I, though Naruto, are both blessed with extremely large chakra reserves, and I know that you can handle this. But Darnie-san, how will this help me with my training and with being a ninja later? I can see that it would give me edge numbers wise if I were in a pinch, but that's all I can see. Darius shook his head at this, but decided to give him a demonstrating instead of an explanation. Darius pulled out a notepad and ripped out a page and handed it and a pencil to Naruto and walked away a good 15 feet with his back to the clone and Naruto. Okay, Naruto, I want you to write something on that paper. I don't care what it is, how much or little you say, but something other than ramen, that would just be too easy to guess. Once you've done that, hand the paper to my clone, it will not carry the paper to me or say anything at all. Naruto frowned as he scratched through the word he had just wrote on the paper, the clone chuckling as he did so. Naruto quickly wrote something down on the paper and handed it to the clone. The clone read the paper and handed it back to Naruto before going up in a puff of smoke. Darius, after a few seconds, still facing away, spoke up. Yes, she can be, she is for a reason, and one reason is because she loves you, Kiba and Hana. Naruto's eyes widened as he looked down at the paper that said, Sumka-chan is so strict. How did you do that? Naruto excitedly ran over to Darius and waited for him to explain things to him. The Kage Bunshin no Jutsu was created as a scouting technique, that way the user could create a clone that would go in and gather as much information as it could. Even if the clone was discovered and killed, all of its memories would be sent back to the user. No risk of casualties, no loss of information if the spy were to be killed or captured, no way for the spy to be tortured or interrogated. So tell me, if you were to make a dozen clones and have them each study a scroll or book, then dispel, what do you think would happen? Smirking at the look of dawning understanding on Naruto's face as he realized what kind of awesome tool this could really be to him. He quickly bowed to Darius and they started working on getting him to learn the new jutsu with Tsume and Hana watching on from the house, albeit from different rooms and windows. Flashback end. After the memory passed, something dawned on Naruto. He's a Jonin, we're not even genin yet and we're meant to get those bells from him. Either he's insane, or this is more than testing our skills, or both. I need to find Sakura and the Tem and see what they think. Naruto then took a soft sniff of the air and followed his nose to his teammates. As Naruto crept his way toward Sakura, Kakashi glanced over to the bushes that Naruto was moving, though he was very good at his stealth, better than Sakura, and on par, if not better than Sasuke. His eye glanced over to the hiding place of each as each name came to his mind. As Kakashi read his smut, Sakura lay on her belly under a bush at the edge of the clearing. She had wondered where the real Naruto was until a hand clamped over her mouth from behind and a soft, calm voice that she recognized spoke up. It's just me, Sakura. I'm gonna take my hand off your mouth now, just don't get loud, okay? Sakura glared at him, but nodded anyway. Once his hand was gone, she whispered harshly at him. What do you want, you idiot? I wanted to get an opinion from you on some observations and thoughts I had. Think about this, Kakashi's a Jonin, we're fresh out of the academy and he wants us to attack him and take those two bells off his waist. There's no way in hell that any of us, not even Sasuke, could do that alone at this point. There's something more to this test. A second meaning to it behind what he's originally leading us to think. Sakura was about to comment on Naruto's blasphemous comment about Sasuke until she stopped and thought about it. She had to admit, Naruto had a point. Why would our sensei do that unless? As much as I hate to say it, you're right, Naruto, there is more to this, we need to find. She was interrupted by the call of Kaden, Gokaku no Jutsu. Both teens turned to look into the center of the field to see Sasuke breathing out a massive ball of fire toward Kakashi, who just stood there until the fireball engulfed him completely. Sakura went to get up and head for Sasuke to congratulate his greatness before Naruto once again clamped his hand over her mouth and held her down when he noticed something wrong. Sakura, look. Naruto took his hand from her mouth to point out the smoking log where Kakashi had been standing. When Sasuke saw this as well, he started yelling out to the woods to Kakashi. Come out and fight me, you coward. Fight me face to face and quit treating me like a kid. Before Sasuke could spout off again, a pair of hands shot out of the ground and dragged Sasuke down into the ground up to his neck, leaving only his head above the ground. Doden. Shinju Zanshu no Jutsu. Kakashi emerged from the ground and moved in front of Sasuke, crouching down as he started to speak to him. Now Sasuke, why would I stand here and fight you face to face? We're ninja, not samurai, we fight from the shadows, rely on deception and trickery. We hardly ever stand face to face with our opponents, we strike from behind, above, the sides, and as you just learned, from below. We are not honorable, We are the ones that do the dirty work in this world, we do what we must to get the jobs done. You'd be wise to learn and accept that. Kakashi then quickly jumped away from Sasuke's head as half a dozen kunai impacted inches from Sasuke's face. You idiot. You could have hit Sasuke-kun. Naruto sighed and hung his head when he landed in the clearing, then looked over to see Kakashi coming at Naruto, book still in hand. This sucks. Quickly jumping back, Naruto formed a dozen shadow clones that started rushing Kakashi two at a time, the ones rushing holding kunai and aiming to cut the cords of the bells as the remaining clones stood back throwing shuriken to try and guide and limit Kakashi's movements to limited effect. As each clone dispersed, another would run in to replace the last until only one remained, standing back with a pair of kunai in hand. I'm gonna get those bells, Kakashi-sensei. Hearing this after seeing Naruto using real strategy, albeit limited as it was, gave a small, hidden smile at the blonde before him. Naruto rushed at Kakashi, ready to swing, but then puffed into a cloud of smoke in his face. Stopping for a second, Kakashi turned around to see a hole where Sasuke used to be, then was caught by surprise as a cry of, Gatsuga! As a pair of what looked like horizontal tornadoes burst through the cloud formed by the burst shadow clone. Kakashi's eye went wide in surprise, not expecting Naruto to pull a move or plan like this. As the move connected with Kakashi, there was a shower of splinters signaling that he had once again used substitution to avoid the attack. As Naruto and his clone landed, both holding a kunai in each hand since he didn't have the natural claws like Tsume, Hana, and Kiba did. They looked around as the wood splinters rained down around them for Kakashi until said Jonin quickly showed up behind the duo and stabbed the Naruto on the left only to receive a puff of smoke, little to his surprise. The remaining Naruto got into a stance, ready to attack. Quickly charging in and laying out a barrage of slashes and stabs at Kakashi's midsection, Naruto started working his attacks toward Kakashi's hip, hoping to even chance cutting one or both of the cords. That hope was quickly removed as Kakashi suddenly disappeared from in front of him in mid-swing, causing Naruto to overbalance and stumble forward. As Naruto stood straight and looked around, Naruto finally figured out Kakashi was when he heard his sensei's voice speak up from low and behind him. Senin Garashi. Kakashi was squatted down behind Naruto with his hands held together around his book with the middle and index fingers of both hands placed together before ramming his hand upwards toward Naruto's posterior. Kakashi had expected Naruto to go flying away from him, but instead was rewarded with another puff of smoke. That boy is sneakier than I gave him credit for. Kakashi started to smirk a little as he opened his book back up and started to giggle after a second. Off in the woods a good ways away Naruto closed his eyes as he crouched with Sakura and Sasuke. Okay. He's dispelled the last of my clones, if I'm right, he's going to wait for us to come at him again instead of coming after us. I think I figured out what he's trying to get us to do. And what would that be, Dobi? Sasuke gave Naruto a scowl, thinking him an idiot, but curious nonetheless. He wants us to work together. He wants us to be a pack. I mean team. It's just like Sumka-chan always taught Kiba and I, a single wolf can take down a deer, but a pack of wolves can take down a bison. Sakura sat there in silence for a moment as she thought about it, then before she could ask, Sasuke surprised her by posing her exact thoughts. So what's the plan? Kakashi was starting to wonder if the three were going to make another attempt before the time ran out when all of a sudden, Naruto, once again, strode out into the clearing in front of him with a rather smirk on his face. You seem rather confident, Naruto. That's because I'm going to get those bells, Kakashi-sensei. As he spoke, Naruto drew out a pair of kunai, spinning them on his fingers before gripping them reverse grip, the grin never leaving his face before creating a wall clones, then 2/3 of those roughly 30 clones hanged into Sasuke and Sakura. All of the Narutos shouted in unison, "Let's go!" And they all rushed in, fists and feet flew as the clones came in at Kakashi, who actually put away his book now. Blocking kicks by kicking at shins, catching fists and spinning them away or pulling them with the momentum and letting them collide with the attacker coming from the other side. This was merely a workout for Kakashi, but he was very impressed with the plan of attack. The clones started thinning before only one Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke remained standing in front of him, all three sweating and breathing a little heavily as the alarm went off. Kakashi relaxed from his ready stance and stepped closer to the trio of genin hopefuls. Well, it looks like you did not pass. I guess I was wrong about you three. I wouldn't say that just yet, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto smirked as he held up the pair of bells that had previously been attached to his waist. Kakashi patted his waist as he wondered just when they had gotten the bells before it dawned on him. They had all hidden themselves in with the clones. You were one of the clones I caught and threw, weren't you, Naruto? Naruto's grin got that much bigger as Kakashi acknowledged their achievement. Very well done, but there remains the fact that there are only 2 bells, one of you has to go back. Naruto took the bells, and instead of handing one to Sakura or Sasuke, or even one to each leaving himself none, Kakashi was surprised yet again when Naruto took the bells and tossed them to Kakashi and listened with pride to Naruto's next words as all 3 genin stood there smiling and smirking at Kakashi. Pass us or fail us, either way, we're doing it as a team. Smiling right back at them, Kakashi pocketed the bells and spoke up. Congratulations Team 7, you pass. Naruto sat relaxing on the couch in the living room with Kiba, Hana, and Tsume that night. Kiba was laying on the rug petting Akamaru as he lay on his chest. Tsume was sitting in her armchair reading one of her books with Kuromaru laying asleep beside the chair. Lastly, Hana was sitting on the couch with Naruto like she usually was, though tonight, she was sitting on the far end instead of cuddling up to her brother, like she did most night. Kiba and Tsume had both taken note of this, because even if she didn't cuddle with Naruto, she would normally at least sit close to him and talk or read. Tonight though, she sat staring at the fireplace with a far-off look in her eyes. They had been a little concerned about her look, but wrote it off to her thinking about a mission or one of her friends that were out on one. Naruto on the other hand was trying hard to hide his overwhelming concern for her actions. He had never seen her act this way around him before, so naturally, he started to wonder if it was something that he had done. He would steal glances over at her as he sat there running through what had happened that day and the days before to see if he could think of anything that he had done to upset her so. I don't think I did anything to upset her at graduation, she seemed happy and cuddled with me that night. His mind went to that weekend. They had all gotten into a splash fight in the backyard when they gave the Ninken their baths. Even Tsume had gotten in on it, splashing all 3 of them until they teamed up on her, each with buckets. Naruto smiled a little remembering that day, though the smile didn't last as he heard Hana sigh and get up to leave, heading up the stairs without a word. Naruto felt that he had really done something wrong now since she always gave him a hug before she went to bed. Next morning, Naruto was laying back in a grassy field in a circle with his head pointed at the heads of Kiba, Shikamaru, and Choji, watching the clouds pass by as they randomly chatted. What was your test like, guys? Directing his question at Shikamaru and Choji. After Shikamaru's completely expected, troublesome, Choji spoke up. Asuma-sensei had us hunt him down, then capture and restrain him for 3 hours to make sure he didn't escape. He went easy on us though. Kiba quirked an eyebrow and questioned eloquently, huh? Shikamaru spoke up this time to answer. Kiba, think about it, Asuma-sensei is a jonin, a skilled one. The second the 3 hours was up, he literally cut the cords around him with his chakra and stood up to congratulate us. He could have escaped at any moment he wanted to that entire time. We're just lucky that he purposely limited himself to very low chunin or high genin. Naruto gave a bit of a snort and explained his team's test to them and how troublesome it was to get Sasuke to pitch in on the plan. Choji nodded and offered up the last few chips in his bag before pulling out another one and asking Kiba about his test. Well, it wasn't too hard. but it really tested us all out. We didn't really do any fighting till after the test itself. Kurenai sensei gathered us all together and told us that she had gone all around the village hiding 12 items. 3 of the items she hid in places like people's houses and asked them to have us convince them to let us get the items. One of those items was in the mission office being held by Iruka sensei. After we returned with the items, which turned out to be scrolls, all of them were bits of information that we had to interpret. What the scroll told us was that there was a meeting going on at a certain time and place between 2 inches high priority targets, that we had to spy on and return with the information from the meeting. We managed to get to that meeting right as they were getting there. We sat there and listened to them talk about nothing for 2 hours. I guess it was worth it though. She passed us once we told her everything that happened. Looks like we're going to be tracking in recon team. Shikamaru nodded at Kiba's presumption, considering his and his team's abilities and clans. They all stared at the clouds for a while longer before Naruto finally spoke up. Hey Kiba, do you know why Hana was acting so strange last night? Did I do something to make her mad at me? Kiba rolled over and propped himself on his elbows. I don't know man, but I have never seen her act like that. She didn't even cuddle with you. Last time she didn't do that was when you accidentally broke her cup, and that she didn't even give you a hug. That's... I don't know man. Hearing these things, Shikamaru started to wonder about a few things. Naruto, how do you feel about Hana? Naruto rolled over this time, looking at Shikamaru as he continued to stare at the clouds. What do you mean? Naruto had a puzzled look on his face. Shikamaru let out a low sigh. What I mean is, what do you feel for Hana when you are around her, when you two talk or do anything together, when you look at each other? Naruto lay there thinking for a moment. Well, I always want to make her smile, make her laugh, make her comfortable. I always try to do those things too. Whenever she cuddles with me on the couch or hugs me, I feel warm, and comfortable, and happy. I always seem to smile when I see her, and I'm sad when she is. Naruto hung his head a little, remembering how down he felt last night at her actions, and how much worse he felt when he and Kiba found out that she had left before they made it to breakfast this morning. I see. As troublesome as it is, Naruto. You're in love with Hana. When Shikamaru said this, both Naruto and Kiba's eyes widened, and the crunching of Choji's chips momentarily stopping signaled their all-around surprise. Love. You think I love Hana? Naruto sputtered a little. Choji sat up and looked at Naruto. It sounds like it fits. I mean, from everything you just said, it sounds exactly like what my dad says about my mom. It also seems like Hana may have feelings for you too from the way she acts around you. Naruto and Kiba both sat there and thought about it for a while, remembering the little smiles that Hana only seemed to have for Naruto, their hugs, the cuddling, how she seemed to want his attention and company when possible. She was doing pretty much the same thing Naruto was doing to Anne for her. Kiba sat up as well and looked at Naruto. I think they're right man, but I still have no idea what caused her to act completely out of character last night. It was at this point that a feminine voice chirped in from the tree line. I think I might know. The boys all turned to see Ino slowly walking up to them with a bit of a sad look on her face. How might you know that, Ino? Shikamaru lazily spoke up. Because I overheard her and another girl talking earlier when I went to run an errand for mom. I had just gotten done picking up. Flashback. Ino was walking down the street with a bag of groceries and decided to rest for a moment on a bench outside the patio seating of a small tea shop. As she sat there, she overheard a pair of girls talking, recognizing one of them as Kiba's sister Hana. Taking a look behind her, she noticed that the other was a young woman about their age with her brown hair done up in a pair of bun. Neji does look rather handsome and is very skilled. Ino's eyes got big as she sat there thinking that she had just happened upon some new gossip by complete accident. Yeah, he is rather dreamy, but he's a little stuck up though. His skills are something to behold. Yeah they are. Hey Tenten, have you seen him shirtless? The conversation was just starting to get juicy when Ino was snapped out of her snooping by the voice of a man she would always recognize. Am I interrupting anything, princess? The voice belonged to Inoichi, her father. No daddy, was just taking a quick break before I headed home to get the groceries to mom. Ino panicked a little, knowing full well that her father greatly disliked her being involved with gossip, especially starting it. Well, you should go ahead and get that all home and into the fridge before it starts to go bad. I know for a fact that your mother put my favorite ice cream on your shopping list, and I really don't want melted ice cream. Knowing exactly what his little girl was up to, Inoichi let it slide and encouraged her to head on home and cut her off from gathering any more gossip. Flashback end. Ino looked up from the ground as she finished telling what happened. When she did, she saw a defeated look on Naruto's face. Is this true? Ino sadly nodded her head. It's what I heard, Naruto. I'm sorry, it looks like Hana like a boy from her class named Neji. Kiba piped up at that with a growl. Neji? That arrogant bastard. He's Hinata's older cousin, she treats him like a big brother, and in turn he treats her like garbage. Kiba, calm down. The defeated Naruto spoke in a soft tone that concerned his friend. I'm sure that if she got with Neji, he'd treat her better. Saying this, Naruto got up and started to walk from the field. He tossed a wave over his shoulder as he walked off. I'm headed home, guys, I'll talk to you later. Across town, an hour and a half earlier. So you like the Hyuga boy Neji? Hana sat smirking a little at the table as she sipped her tea with her friend Tenten. Tenten simply blushed at that comment, wishing she hadn't told Hana in the first place. Neji does look rather handsome and is very skilled. Tenten blushed a little harder as she looked at Hana with a bit of a sad smile. Yeah, he is rather dreamy, but he's a little stuck up though. His skills are something to behold. Getting a rather mischievous glint to her eye, one that would match her surrogate brother's almost perfectly, Hana went in for another strike. Yeah, they are. Hey Tenten, have you seen him shirtless? That did it. Tenten's nose gained a small trickle of blood as she emitted a goofy little giggle before shaking her head to clear her mind. Maybe. Hana motioned to her upper lip for a second before Tenten caught on and quickly wiped the blood away. What about you, Hana? You like Neji too? Tenten posed a question that she feared since their academy days, hoping that she wouldn't have the competition of one of her closer friends for the heart of the boy she'd come to admire, and lightly love. Hana looked her in the eye before smiling. The smile gave Tenten a little bit of a chill before Hana finally spoke up. No, I don't like your dream boy. I actually like someone that most say I really shouldn't. Her tone dropped at the last bit, knowing what people thought of Naruto all too well. Hearing this, and then the tone of voice, Tenten really needed to know who Hana had fallen for. Who is it? Is it someone I know? It was Hana's turn to blush a little now. You know of him at least. Tenten leveled a glare at Hana. Come on, spill. Hana let out a sigh before she finally let out in a whisper. What did you say? I couldn't hear you. I said it's Naruto. Hana let out a bit loud, gaining a few glances from people around them. That blonde boy that lives with you and your family? Tenten asked in honest curiosity. Yes, the same. I just recently realized it too. Took Yugao saying that she might swoop in and give him a try before I came to an understanding of my feelings for him. Hana had a bit of a down look on her face. Picking up on this, Tenten's soft smile turned into a concerned frown. What's wrong with liking him? Did your mom say you couldn't? Maybe you have to marry some fat wealthy businessman from another country. Before Tenten could build up more steam, Hana cut her off. He doesn't know, and on top of that, I kinda gave him a really cold shoulder last night and this morning. I really think I might have hurt him. The cold shoulder, what did you do that qualifies as that? Tenten got up from her chair across from Hana and moved to the one next to her. Well, normally I would cuddle with him on the couch at nights, and if not, I'd sit close to him. Before either of us would go to bed, I'd always give him these long, tight hugs. I always sleep better after one of them. Needless to say, I slept like crap last night. It was so bad that I was up early, went and ate breakfast, and was gone before he or my brother were even up this morning. Hannah was staring into her tea at this point. Tenten softly put her hand on Hannah's shoulder and gave it a soft squeeze. I'm sure that most of this can be cleared up if you sit down and talk to him. Tell him that you were confused and really needed time to yourself to think about things. Then you confess to the boy. There's no way that you're gonna get with him if you don't admit your feelings to him as well. When Tenten said this, Hannah leveled a deadpan look at her and flatly stated, "This last bit of advice coming from you." Tenten could only sit there and scratch the back of her head and chuckle sheepishly. That night, in Izuka main house. It was about dark by the time that Hannah came home that night. She had spent a few more hours hanging out with Tenten, then some time with Yugao, who gave her effectively the same advice that Tenten had given her earlier. When Hannah got to the living room, hoping to find Naruto and be able to clear things up with him, and hopefully see if they could start a relationship, she found only Tsume, Kiba, and their combined Ninken in the room. "Mom, where's Naruto? Is he not home, or maybe out back training?" Hannah asked Tsume, wondering where the object of her recently confirmed affection was. Tsume, looking up from her book and seeing the look on Hannah's face, was a bit confused at the look, considering that when Kiba got home earlier, he had told Tsume everything that had gone on, about Naruto's feeling for Hannah, which brought a small smile to her face, and then about Hannah's perceived interest in the Hyuga boy. Before she could speak though, Kiba spoke up a bit gruffly. "What does it matter to you?" Hannah was hurt when she heard the words come from her brother's mouth. What hurt her more was the tone of his voice. Had she really hurt Naruto that badly with her actions last night and this morning? Her thoughts were interrupted by Tsume when she spoke up. "Kiba, enough." Looking over to Hannah now that she had silenced her son, though she understood why he said that and felt that way. Naruto went to bed early. He said he wanted to rest up for his day of training and his first missions tomorrow. Let him sleep. Hannah nodded at this and headed up the stairs to her room, the triplets following her up the stairs, emitting soft whimpers at their companion's saddened demeanor. Once she reached the top of the stair and went to pass the door to her brother's room, she looked in to see Naruto curled up and facing the wall, his back to the door, to her. Hannah continued on to her room and got ready for bed, climbing in and letting her Ninken all cuddle up around her, trying to offer her what little comfort they could. Before drifting off to sleep, Hannah mumbled out, "I'm sorry Naruto-kun." Next morning, in Izuka main house. Like the night before, Hannah had had one of the worst nights of sleep she had had in years. She had suffered through bad dreams and flat-out nightmares last night that ranged from Naruto simply being angry with her, all the way to him hating and disowning her as he walked off with another girl, getting farther and farther away as she tried to catch him with outstretched hands reaching for her comfort. Having slept so badly, Hannah had slept late today. She didn't even notice till she got down to the kitchen only to find the triplets laying around near their bowls, waiting for Hannah to feed them. As she fed them, she let out a groan. "Looks like I missed him again." Sitting down and slowly eating her breakfast, Hannah got an idea, a small smile forming on her face. "I'll go see him at his training ground, see how he's doing during a break, and see if I can't fix things and get them started down the right track, the track that leads to Naruto-kun and I being together and happy." Hannah smiled finally and shoveled down the rest of her cereal before putting away her bowl and gathering her things to head off to see her Naruto. At Team 7's training field, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura all stood or sat there at the bridge in their training field as they waited for their ever-tardy sensei to show up. "Man, where is Kaka-sensei? What do you think, Sasuke-kun?" Her questions only garnered the Dark Prince's usual response of, "HN." Feeling a little down, but not defeated by his response, or lack thereof, turned to see Naruto sitting with his knees to his chest and his chin on his knees. This didn't look or feel right to her. The blonde boy before her was always happy, always loud and boisterous. This quiet, depressed-looking Naruto felt like an imposter to her. Sakura walked over to Naruto and sat down beside him, for once, not yelling at him as she did. Naruto, what's wrong? This isn't like you to be down like this. Sakura sat quietly beside him as she waited for him to respond. Sasuke had noticed Naruto's mood as well, but unlike Sakura, he really didn't care. He was just happy that one nuisance was quiet. When Sakura walked over and quietly tried to talk to said nuisance, Sasuke was even more pleased with Naruto's current mood since it had drawn Sakura's attention and quieted her voice. After a few quiet minutes, Naruto finally answered, moving his head so that his forehead now rested against his knees as his muffled voice came to her ears. It's nothing, Sakura. This last bit really caught her attention. She may not have publicly said so, but she had always cherished the fact that Naruto had called her Sakura-chan since before the academy. They were friends, though nowhere near as good of friends now as they had been back then, but still enough that him leaving off the honorific stung her like a needle. Naruto, I know it's not nothing, and I know I'm not as good a friend as I used to be, but I am still your friend. Please, tell me what's wrong. Sakura softly pleaded with the depressed boy beside her. Letting out a deep, defeated sigh, Naruto finally spoke up again. I've fallen in love. Naruto let it sit at that for a moment. That moment was long enough for Sakura to get the wrong impression and speak up to that point. But Naruto, that's a great thing. Love is wonderful. It should make you happy though, not sad. Normally I'd agree, but the girl I love, she likes another boy. Sakura's face fell at that. Now she knew why he felt so down. He loved someone that didn't love him back. Glancing over at Sasuke then back to Naruto, Sakura could honestly say that she knew exactly how that felt. Naruto, please stand up, okay? Please. Sakura stood up and stood in front of him, waiting for him to stand as well. When he finally did, Sakura surprised him and stepped up to him, wrapping him in a tight hug, trying her best to offer him comfort. After a few moments, Naruto's arms hesitantly moved up and hugged her tight in return. Naruto held her in that hug as if it was the only thing holding him together right now, and Sakura was for once more than glad to hold on as long as he needed to help her once good friend. During that hug, Sakura resolved herself to be a good friend to Naruto once again, the way they had been before the academy and the fan club made her act so mean to him. Path leading to Team 7's field. Hana was walking calmly down the path as she got closer to the field she was told Naruto's team had signed up to use as their main training field. She was smiling, imagining the feeling that his smile gave her, the butterflies that had started to stir thinking of their first kiss after she confessed to him. Hana thought to herself that she was acting awful girly right now, but she quickly chalked it up to finding out that she had fallen in love with the boy that had been so much like a brother to her. Hana saw that the path was coming to an end which would empty into the field where she would soon see the man she hoped to soon be her new boyfriend. As she got there, she stopped in her tracks, her eyes wide, and her chest clenching. What caused this reaction in her? As she had just stepped into the clearing and looked around, she was greeted by the sight of Naruto and his pink-haired teammate holding each other in a tight embrace. Hana was crushed.